Well, thank you for joining us for Congressman Hagedorn's 17th in-person town hall. And please rise, as we're going to start with a prayer. Reverend Grant will lead.
Well, good morning, everyone. God bless each of you. I kind of feel like Dorothy Gale that I'm not in Kansas anymore, because typically in church, all of you would be back there, not up front here. But we'll pray. Good and gracious Lord, as we come in prayer, we think of your words in the Sermon on the Mount that we are to be salt and light, the text for this coming Sunday. We give thanks, Lord, that you are the light of the world, and you would call upon each of us to reflect that light in our lives by our words and our actions, that they may be seasoned with salt and full of grace and mercy and kindness, that we might reflect your love. For we are all made in your image. In the name of Jesus we would pray. Amen.
Please remain standing. Brown County Veteran Services Officer Greg Peterson will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
So, military veterans are allowed to salute the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Greg. Please have your seats. Okay, a couple of items here. This is a family-friendly event, so please keep in mind in how you conduct yourselves. No signs are permitted. If you are waving or holding a sign, you'll be asked not to. And if you do not abide, you'll be asked to leave. Congressman Hagedorn will give a brief update on what's happening in D.C., and then we'll get to questions. There's going to be 2 fish bowls out here with questions. Here they come. One of them are for Brown County residents. I'll be pulling out of that one. I'll read the name on the question. We ask that when the name is read, you raise your hand so we can identify who you are, and you can further up on the question possibly after that. If time allows, we'll take questions from our second fish bowl, which is from people out of the county. This was a New Ulm event here. And that's pretty much it. Just ask you to conduct yourselves cordially. We want to get our questions answered, and that's what Mr. Hagedorn's job is. So without further ado, Congressman Jim Hagedorn.
Well, good morning. Nice to be here. Can everybody hear me okay? Or good? Commissioner, thanks for being here and helping us moderate. We appreciate that. And I'd like to again thank the pastor for the prayer and our fine veteran service officer for the pledge. We have veteran service officers all across the state. Not every state does that. I think Minnesota is a leader in the nation, and commend you and our friend Joe Steck, who works as our Veterans Outreach Officer, and all the veterans that have helped and done so much to protect our freedoms and let us live such a wonderful way of life. So thank you for that. We're here with Representative Torkelson, one of your fine leaders in St. Paul, and you're blessed to have excellent representation in this county with Representative Torkelson and then Senator Dames. And I'd like to recognize my friend Howard Swenson, who served many years in the legislature. It's great to see you again, Howard. Thanks for being here. So Brown County is one of the wonderful places of our state, and I will always enjoy being here. There's a lot going on, particularly associated with agriculture. And before we get into some of the specifics about what's happening in Brown County, I'll just give you a little update on what's going on in Washington and talk just this much about the job. First of all, the job, obviously U.S. Representative. There's about 700,000 people in our district. Our district goes all the way from South Dakota to Wisconsin, and then Iowa up about 80 miles. So New Prague would be pretty much top of the district, and then tapers down on both sides. 21 counties. So pretty fair amount of territory to get across and meet folks. So I always say though, that we're here in Brown County, and this is the most important of the 21 counties by far. No doubt about that. So, in winning the job, we talked about what we're going to do with it. But first of all, what it entails really is going back and forth to Washington. And then when I'm out there, we do the legislative business. You might think we're out there more than we are, but we're really not there that much. It's about 3 days a week, 3 nights a week. Turns out to be no more than a third of the year. They have our schedule down pretty good, but we can come back and forth. I've made that trip back and forth now in just a little over a year, something like 36 times. And so we don't spend any time in Washington. We get back in the district and work with you and try to stay connected. The biggest part of the job, I guess, is voting, because they give you a voting card, they bring up positions, and the country's going to go one way or the other based on your votes. And so we've done that over 700 times. Only missed 3 or 4, and just one I had to come back for a funeral of a dear friend, so I missed I think 3 votes on that day, and just one other. Not too bad. Pretty good voting record, something like 99.7%. And they had me serving on committees. And I promised you, when I tried to get this job, that if I served in the House, I would do everything possible to be on the Agriculture Committee. And we lobbied, and we did get our Republican friends to put me on the Agriculture Committee. I think it's very important. That was my first choice. After that, they put me on small business. So, agriculture, small business, it kind of fits this district. We'll talk a little bit about that. We've introduced legislation, one of my bills for small business, that just passed the House not too long ago, about a month, and co-sponsored a bunch of bills. We'll talk about some of those as well. And then, of course, casework. Casework's a big, important part of this job, but I want to stress right off the top that everyone who's ever served in this position, whether it was Congressman Gutnick or Congressman Walls, Congressman Penny over the other side, or whoever it was, they always had staffs that did everything they could to help people with problems with government. And so we try to emulate their fine service. If you ever have any problems with government, the federal government, you'd like our support and help. If you have questions, please contact our office in Mankato. Our Deputy Director, Neil Breitbart, is here today, along with other staff. If you have some questions now, please talk with them on the way out. Come talk with me for that matter. And lastly, one of the great honors that I get is to nominate people to our service academies. Naval Academy, West Point, over in Colorado Springs. Wonderful opportunities. I believe I spoke with a woman today whose daughter, I believe, has applied. It might be going where I can't see it. It was so bright. She was here anyway. I think she was applying to be in West Point. So that's great. We'll follow that through. It's a wonderful opportunity, and if you know somebody that's about 16 years old and a junior that might want to serve in one of our fine service academies, get a great education, and serve our country, defend our country, please make sure they contact our office and apply. And so, like I said, it's quite an honor. This last week in Washington was a good week from my perspective. Just yesterday, we had a jobs report, 425,000 new jobs. Wages are higher, the economy is really humming along, especially the business economy. There's great demand in the business economy across this district. Most of the business people I talk with, the only problem they're having is finding skilled work. That's a pretty good problem when you think about it. That means there's a lot going on in the business community. A day earlier, we saw another Al-Qaeda terrorist wiped off the face of the earth. That was a good thing for our country. It was a good thing for people around the world. Just before that, the president was acquitted, and I believe rightly so. I did not support impeachment. I voted against the process. I thought it was overtly political. I voted against the impeachment articles because I felt what the Democrats were doing was divisive. And instead of doing all that, wasting a bunch of time, we should have been working on shared ideas where we had some overlap, where we could all agree. And the president brought those things up, and the day before, in his speech, his State of the Union speech, I was there. I thought it was the best speech he had ever given, as far as I was concerned. It was a terrific speech. It was wonderful to be there. Thank you for the honor to have the opportunity to be there. The president said, hey, okay, he didn't even get into it, but we're past this impeachment now. Well, I guess most of us are. Al Green are probably revving up new impeachment articles as we speak today. But most of us are past the impeachment. Can't we just start looking at what we agreed to? How about a transportation and infrastructure? Wouldn't that be something we should work on, the rest of the Congress? I think we can all agree we need better roads and bridges. We need to get things fixed up. We'll talk about Highway 14 and other projects. What about prescription drugs? You know, there's vast bipartisan support for reform of the prescription drug market, particularly the generic space. We can get that done in a week if they come up and work together, the House and the Senate, Pelosi and McConnell and the President. We get that done in a week. Border security. That should not be a partisan deal. Every president in the history of this country, if they've asked for help on the border to protect our country, has received that help. Not this president, unfortunately. And so you get into other things like individual tax reform. I think that's really one of the ideas I've been working on in that area is the concept of using pre-tax dollars. So you don't have to pay federal taxes on the money you would spend for child care, paying back student loans, and of course all the array of healthcare, medical services, and others. That should be expanded past $2,800 now, and you shouldn't have to work for a corporation or the government in order to have that advantage. Everybody who earns income should have that advantage, and that should be greatly expanded. So working on that, and I'm going to go to the administration and see if we can get that slipped into their tax reform bill that they're going to bring to Congress. Those are the types of things I think we should be working on moving forward. That's what I hear. That's what I hear around the district. Now, a quick kind of talk just a little bit about this county and a little bit about what's going on in agriculture. First of all, Highway 14. So we know the project's been around a long time. Been trying to complete the corridor, expand it to 4 lanes. This last stretch, it's pretty much all done except this last stretch from Nicollet to New Ulm. So last year, the Walz administration, the Minnesota Department of Transportation, submitted a build grant application. They applied for money, $25 million to the federal government. And the build grant was not accepted or not funded by the Department of Transportation for whatever reason. Actually, next week we're going to have a meeting with them to try to find out more of what was going on there. But there were about 1,000 projects, and I think 100 of them were funded. So, there are 3 in Minnesota, and none of our Minnesota projects paid. But we all work together. I don't know anyone in all of Minnesota, I really don't know anyone who isn't for completing this last stretch of Highway 14 in 4 lanes. I don't know that. Paul, you don't know that, right? We're all on the same team. So, the governor, Commissioner Kelleher of MnDOT, Mr. Torkelson, Dames, all the other representatives around here, the mayors, everybody, we're all working, pushing the same direction. And so the governor Governor Walz was in Washington this week, and we had a nice lunch with him, the congressional delegation. And Governor and I, we've always gotten along just fine, even though we ran against each other and all those things, but we get along fine. And he said that the Department of Transportation, I was talking with Paul about it, is going to submit or has submitted another bid to the federal government, this time for maybe $40 or $50 million, and try to get those monies going to meet the state fund, because the project's almost $90 million. So it's not all going to be funded by federal, it's not all going to be funded by state. We're trying to have some mixture of that. And so when we move forward again on that, I will pledge to you that I will personally spend time with Secretary Chow. I will go to every last person I know in the administration and make it clear to my leadership in the Republican Party that that application by Minnesota Department of Transportation needs to be approved. We need the funding, and we need to cooperate and work with our friends here in Minnesota to get Highway 14 completed. That is our top transportation priority in the district. So you have my pledge. I just saw 2 people lose their lives in that stretch. It was very dangerous. Of course, it was icy conditions. All roads are dangerous in icy conditions, but we want to see that completed as fast as possible. And it's going to be a great, not just for safety, but it's going to be terrific for the economy here in and around Rochester. So we all get it, and we're all on the same team. Now, agriculture. I spent a day and a half over at the Minnesota Ag Expo a couple weeks ago in Mankato, and I have to tell you, from last year to this year, if last year the optimism of farmers was 50%, this year it was 95%. Really excited. They're excited about these trade deals. They're excited about the president fixing the ethanol program, and they're excited. They think they have a growing season that's going to be good. I hope we do. But on the trade deal with the United States, Mexico, Canada, the one down there, we fronted for that. I fronted for that every day that I was in office when we had to get started, because 48% of our trade in Minnesota goes to either Canada or Mexico. It's a big deal. So expanding that, making sure that that's better, especially for our dairy farmers where we had nothing in NAFTA. NAFTA didn't do anything. You know, that makes sense because you look at Canada and they had 300% tariffs on our dairy products and we're exporting nothing. So it kind of figures. So now we at least have a deal that's going to drop down those barriers and give us a chance. And one of the thrills of supporting that deal all the way through, I had many thrills. We had our sign and we took the Farm Fest and the Secretary of Agriculture, Mr. Perdue, held that up, and that was actually a national picture. Unfortunately, I wasn't in it, but that's the way it goes. But that was really neat. And then we had a rally in Capitol Hill, and that was a bipartisan rally. Chairman Peterson, our neighboring congressman, a Democrat, and Henry Cuellar, a Democrat, and Mr. Acosta, the chairman of the livestock committee, over there. And we had a whole bunch of Republicans. That was good. But I think the highlight, even though it was a cold morning, was our rally here in Brown County at the Hoffman Farm. You see the Hoffmans here. And, you know, we had the Farmers for Free Trade. They rolled in, they went all across the country. They ended up here just south of New Ulm on the Hoffman Farm. And we talked about, we had the Farm Bureau there, pork producers, you know, everybody in agriculture was there. But we talked about how important it was for the dairy farmers and how the dairy farmers had struggled, like any other farmers, but especially in dairy, because the last farm bill, there was something messed up about the last farm bill for dairy. The price of milk would go down, but the production would go up. It made no sense. And it really put pressure on smaller producers, those less than 250 head. And we have a lot of those, and people just like the Hoffmans, who I think have been, that farm's been in business for 5 generations, right? Something like that. And so we talked about how important that was, and how people were fearful of losing their land. I see Howard and Mrs. Swenson, you also been in the dairy business many times. We talked to your son Paul about that. And how important it was that we give not just some hope, but that we see some light at the end of the tunnel and we get moving positive again. So I think this deal with the United States, Mexico, Canada, this trade agreement was a good start. And I support it for another reason, because when we passed it, it was going to give us, or when we get close to passing it, it was going to help us build momentum for other deals. And we know how important it is in agriculture, manufacturing, medical, everything, how we have to have these markets. We have to increase our markets, open them up so we can have exports, because we have excess production. The best farmers in the world, the most efficient farmers in the world. And they produce more than we can even eat here in the United States. They feed, a big chunk of the world. But if you don't have those markets open, then it makes it tough, and the prices go down, and puts a lot of pressure on everyone, including our rural areas. So we've already seen some good things happening in the area of trade other than USMCA. Phase 1 with China, that was a good deal. Talking about upwards of $50 billion in agriculture products that are going to be exported to China, and then we're going to try to get to phase 2 with that country. And there are people out there on the left, who say, "Oh, drop the tariffs on China." No, we don't want to drop the tariffs on China. That would be the last thing we want to do right now. The president is very smart to keep tariffs on China, because if we want them to purchase our products in phase 1, and we want to get to phase 2, where we're going to talk about them stealing our intellectual property and manipulating their currency and all these forced technology transfers and having enforcement there, what leverage do we have on China if we drop the tariffs? We have none. So we have to hold on to these tariffs, keep them going, make sure China follows through. We get to phase 2, and then we can taper off the tariffs. So he's doing it exactly right. And then you look at other deals, Vietnam, European Union, Great Britain, now that they've left the European Union. That was a good day for freedom. It's a good day for all of us. And then other places like India. You say India. Well, what's going on in India? Well, they have a need over there. They have a pollution problem and other things. They have a need for our ethanol. The president's going to go to India in the near future, and we're trying to cut a deal with them on trade. And that might create another market for 1 billion gallons of our ethanol. And that's all good for Minnesota agriculture. That's all good for our farmers. It's all good for our country. So on trade, I think everyone's pretty much optimistic. We're going the right direction. And we're going to keep promoting that, and we're going to support what the administration is doing in those areas. And then you get into ethanol. And if there was one area that I had disagreements with President Trump and his administration, particularly the EPA, I'm not often in agreement with the EPA for that matter, but I had a disagreement with the way they were implementing the renewable fuel standard. And they were giving these small refinery waivers to places, people, companies that shouldn't have received them. They were undermining the program, and we weren't blending enough ethanol. And so the president came out a couple months ago or so, and he said, we're going to get this all fixed up. And he promised that we're going to blend 15 billion gallons of ethanol and 2.4 billion gallons of biodiesel. And then the EPA came out with a rule that looked a little bit, are they really going to follow on this? So a group of us on agriculture, and our committee on agriculture, we're very bipartisan. Republicans work with Democrats, and we also work around the country, north, south, east, west. Because, we want all of agriculture to do well, but we don't have cotton farming here. And in Texas, they don't have sugar beet farming, but we want them all to do fine, everybody in between. So we all work very, very, very nicely together, and we've put together letters and other things and sent them to the EPA saying, you're going to implement this program the way Congress intended. And if you don't, we're going to be all over you, and we're going to make sure that the president's promises are, and that he delivers on those. So we're going to keep following that. I have every belief that that's going to happen. We're going to blend the ethanol and biodiesel that they promised, and that's good again for our demand, that's good for our farmers, it's good for our rural areas. And lastly, what's going on in agriculture, where I'm very much focused my attention now that we've moved past trade just a little bit, we're still going to focus there, but it's on protecting the food supply and protecting our farm operations. Brown County has some of the most wonderful livestock operations in the world. And we have some of the most incredible hog operators that you've ever seen. And, just to name a couple, Christensen and Shores. There's some nearby, Compart, and there's some south. The Frepping farms with new fashion pork, and there's protein sources. This district is number 2 in the country for hog production. But when you start looking at all that goes into the hog producers, all the corn, all the soybeans, all the transports, all the packing plants, everything, you start thinking about all the money that's generated from that flows to our main streets, to our car dealers, everyone else. You realize just how important those farmers and those operators are. And the one thing that threatens especially our livestock producers today, mostly the hog operators, is this African swine fever. African swine fever is not being talked about much, but it's pretty important. Obviously, it's not as important as something like the coronavirus, which can kill people and spread. And that's very important. I'm glad we're doing a pretty good job in the United States of protecting our people. But African swine fever is a disease, an infectious disease, that has wiped out half of China's hog population or more. Now put that in perspective, half the world's hogs are in China. So a quarter of the world's hog population has been slaughtered because of this. It spread to Thailand, to Vietnam, all these places over there, not good. Now it's in Poland, heading towards Germany, to be working its way through Europe in the not too distant future. So it's both a very incredible opportunity for our farmers and a huge challenge for all of us. The opportunity is obviously we're going to be able to perhaps start expanding more our hog operations and exporting around the world to fill that void. And it's going to be good for our poultry producers. China's already lifted the ban on them to try to bring things in because they're having a hard time feeding their population, and other countries will too. That demand that increases is going to drive up, hopefully, prices. It's going to create wealth for our area and a lot of other areas, and it should be good for our county, especially here in Brown and our big producers. The challenge, of course, is that what happens if that gets in the United States? If it gets in the United States, it's going to really devastate what's going on with agriculture, particularly in an area like this. So I have a bill that we're working on again. We have 2 competing bills, but it's going to be bipartisan. In the end, we'll all get together. And it involves also the Homeland Security Committee along with agriculture. But our bills would, first and foremost, I want to have a task force between agriculture and Department of Homeland Security to make sure they're working together so we can do everything possible to keep that disease out of the country. Now, believe it or not, sometimes bureaucracies don't talk to each other, even if they have shared goals and get things done. We've seen that a number of times. So we're going to do that, and that's going to help us move back and forth with them and make sure we give them everything they need to do their jobs. Second thing we're going to do is enhance the inspections at the points of entry, particularly at airports and things like that, because if you bring in pork products from China, they just bringing in those products, it can get into the food supply, and before you know it, our hogs are dying. It's a bad deal. So increase the inspectors, and then increase the beagle patrols. People laugh at the beagle patrols, but they're very good at sniffing out the pork at these ports of entry. And I joke that they're so good, in fact, I'm going to take them down to the appropriations committee, sniff out the pork there, and reduce the deficit. That's what we're doing. So in a nutshell, that's kind of what's going on as far as I see it with agriculture, how it applies here in Brown County, some of the big deals that in the past have done, to many of your businesses and toured and talked with folks on Main Street. 3M comes to mind. I remember going through there. It's what an incredible plant. And I think we've got a couple workers here from 3M this morning. But we're going to do everything we can to continue to sustain agriculture, our rural way of life, keep growing the economy, and with that, I think we'll just take some questions. What do you think? Good? All right. Thank you.
All right, again, I'm going to pull a question out of here and show you the name or speak the name. If you'd raise your hand so you can identify yourself. Once again, take my glasses.
Well,
This is from Judy Hahn. Thanks, Judy. Could you speak to the bill that is pushing for boys and girls competing against each other in high school sports?
okay, I think I know what you're talking about. Help if I have it wrong. Let me know. So there's an issue with my position where I think only biological ladies and girls should compete against biological ladies and girls in sports, high school, college, things like that. There have been some instances where biological boys who are transgender end up competing with the ladies and girls, and they're winning championships. And I just think we should keep it separate. So boys should compete against boys, girls should compete against girls. And Congressman Stubbe, Florida, a very acclaimed athlete himself, has introduced that bill. I co-authored it with him, along with Debbie from Arizona, who's Debbie O'Keefe, I like her name. But anyway, so we co-sponsored that bill. I just think going forward, that's the best thing to do. If we have any monies flowing from the federal government to colleges and others, that would be a limit. Boys against boys, girls against girls.
Great, thanks, Judy.
Debbie, last
Thanks,
name.
Judy.
Next one is from Greg Barks. Over here. Thanks, Greg. How important is the USMCA to the first district, and when will Canada ratify it? How are we doing on other trade agreements? That's like 3 questions, Greg. Let's take the first one. How important is the USMCA to the first
knowing
district?
Greg, I'm not surprised. Good friend. Yeah, we covered a lot of that, Greg, but your point's a good one on Canada. They're supposed to ratify it here in the upcoming weeks. And I think the provision in the treaty, if I'm not mistaken, is that after all 3 have ratified, it goes into effect after a period of time. It's either 90 or 180 days. I have to go back and revisit that. But the whole point on the trade agreement is that, first of all, people will know that at some point NAFTA, which is still in existence. Everybody thinks that we wiped out NAFTA. No, we're still trading under the old NAFTA rules, and we will up until the point this goes live. So they know they're going to have some certainty. They know how to conduct their affairs, change their operations, do their marketing different, and try to expand operations in Mexico and Canada. And so that type of certainty is going to help. It's already helping with the other trade agreements as we spoke. Is there anything else that you think we need to cover on that one, or did we get most of it?
I think we covered how important it is to the first district, the whole country, but really to the first district with all of agriculture.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we're so efficient. Our farmers are extraordinary that we overproduce. And if we don't have somewhere to market that excess production, it's prices are going to stagnate. The farmers get, it's going to hurt their operations and make it tougher for them them to stay in business over a long period of time. And I don't know if I can ever say this enough, but the reason we always want to sustain agriculture and keep farmers in business when times are tough, and we did it when there was some trade turbulence here and market facilitation program and payments was important. And the reason we do that is because when smaller operators and smaller farmers sell, they usually sell out to bigger operators. And bigger operators are not bad folks, don't get me wrong. But when that happens, it means less people holding the land, less people working the land, less people living in our rural communities, less people going to our schools, and it starts to put enormous pressure. We already see it in the rural areas. We know how much pressure that we're under just because of the way things are. But this adds to it. So we want to keep every last farmer in business if possible. Keep them going when times are tough. So this is going to be a good way to naturally do it and try to grow businesses and expand operations. We're excited.
Great, thanks, Greg. The next one is Heather Bregel. Right here, thanks, Heather. You've said that onerous and excessive regulations impede the growth and availability of child care services. What are the specific regulations that you propose to eliminate?
So we just had a hearing on this in Washington in small business, and I chaired it with Chairwoman Ms. Finkenauer of Iowa, and I was the ranking member for that subcommittee here. And so we went through the whole deal on child care. At the federal level, there are 4 of us, including Abby Finkenauer, a Democrat, and then Congresswoman Lee of California, Pete Stauber, a Republican up north, and myself. We co-authored a bill that would say that if a nonprofit or other folks that want to put together a child care operation and are having a hard time getting capital for it, that we would instruct the Small Business Administration to make sure that those guaranteed loans can flow there. So we're trying to facilitate that from the federal level. I'll go over the whole issue. So at the federal level, obviously there's a credit in the tax code, and that was increased with the Republican tax bill that just passed a year or so ago. I supported that. There are other concepts like letting people use pre-tax federal dollars in order to pay for child care, which can lower their tax liability and help them save money. But the vast majority of what's going on, if we want to increase access for child care and drive down costs, is here in Minnesota. That's where the changes need to be. Now, I get it that child care is a very important issue. There are families literally that take jobs, don't take jobs, move to cities, whatever, all because of child care. And we don't want that. We want people to make choices based upon what they need to do for their families, not on whether or not they can find somebody to care for their children and do it in an efficient way. A few years ago, went over to Springfield, spoke with the mayor, and had a nice conversation with the mayor. And that was when we used to roll in and talk to our thought leaders. That wasn't something we put on Facebook. We just went and talked to thought leaders. So in case I ever was in the job, hopefully I'd know people and be able to understand a little bit more about what's going on. And then the mayor was talking to me about how their city of about 2,200 people, right around there. And he said, you know, my wife, she's the last provider of child care in Springfield. Beth, John, you guys are more than I don't know who's any more people providing child care than you know in Springfield these days.
Yeah, we have other providers.
So there's more providers now. At the time, she was the only one, and he was concerned, and she was almost 70 years old. He said, what's going to happen when she quits? Might not be anybody here. The reason that's tough is in a little community, how do you attract people in to be in the police, like the chief? How do you attract people in to be teachers, like that? If there's not going to be anyone to take care of the kids, you have to travel sometimes 20, 30 miles. It's not always good on our roads in wintertime and everything else to get that done. So how do we increase the accessibility? How do we drive down the cost? These regulations are the biggest deal. Do I know every regulation in the state of Minnesota? No, but I can tell you they're 400 pages thick. And if you think just in general, how do you understand what's in there? How do you comply with that? And then how do you deliver a product in an efficient way at the lowest cost? You're probably not going to be able to do it if the regulations are 400 thick. It certainly isn't good to try to encourage in-home providers and mom and pop operations, because they're gonna have a tougher time complying. Chairman, do you have any, you've been through this issue, child care a little bit, is there anything you want to weigh in on? No? Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have to turn on my hearing aids, Jim.
I call him chairman because, you know, when he was in the majority, he was the chairman of transportation. I still call him, once a chairman, always a chairman, so I'm sorry.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
And welcome to Brown County. I'm glad you're here. It's really a pleasure to have you here. I was expecting to talk about Highway 14, so.
Yeah,
You know, we have seen a big decrease in the number of in-home child care facilities. And the people I've talked to say the regulations are so challenging that it forces them to quit or brings them to the point where they no longer want to try and provide those services. We have seen a number of communities that have brought resources together to build child care facilities within their community, and we encourage that. That's a good thing. But I think, you know, we still want to have a market where in-home daycare can be provided. And we'll be looking at those regulations as we go into session this year.
yeah, we'd like to be part of that. Hey, Chairman, Paul, while you're at it, what is your take on Highway 14 and where we are? I mean, pretty much where we're working
Well,
together.
as you mentioned earlier, we didn't get the build grant the first time around. There's apparently going to be another round of build grants, so the department, the state has submitted our application again for a build grant at the federal level. We also have submitted, or are going to submit an application with this infra grant that you mentioned earlier. So there's potential for federal resources to help us finish 14. The good news is the department has got the project virtually ready to go. They've been working on the design of the project. They've been doing soil borings this winter to make sure that the soils along the route are usable and how expensive it's going to be to do the project. So we're kind of right on the verge, but it hasn't happened yet. And we'll be working hard. This is the bonding year, of course, in the Minnesota legislature, so there'll be a bonding bill most likely. We're hoping that a lot of transportation funding will be part of that bonding bill, not just state roads, but also local roads and local bridges. Depend on the bonding bill for help from the state, so we'll see how it goes. But we need your help, Jim, on this potential for federal money, not just for Highway 14, but for infrastructure in general, as you mentioned earlier. Federal help really makes a big difference when it comes to infrastructure projects. I was pleased to see that this is not local, but it's important to our state. GLI, the Great Lakes Initiative, recently passed out of the House. The Lake Superior is really important to Minnesota, and the trade that goes through that harbor is really important, not only to Duluth, but to the entire state, and keeping that in working order is really a good thing, and congratulations on that. I serve on the Great Lakes Commission, that's why I kind of bring that up. Trade and infrastructure in Minnesota is something I'm very, very interested in, and thanks for your
All
help.
right, thank you. Nobody's better versed on transportation issues than Paul Torkelson, who was chairman of that committee. He's going to serve on it again. Hopefully he'll be chairman of it again one of these days. But we really appreciate your leadership. And you're absolutely right. You look at what's going on, and you get over to the other side of the district, the Mississippi River. There are locks and dams. Cost sometimes $80 million a year just to keep those things updated.
Can you go back to the question, please?
What's the question?
You didn't quite answer the question on which types of regulations you would you want to get rid of.
Well, obviously, as the chairman said, they're going to go through this in the legislature, and they're going to try to weed out whatever excessive regulations are there. You can't
Do you have
expect
any ideas?
You can't expect me to know what's in 400 pages of Minnesota regulations. Okay, let's move on to locks and dams. So here's the deal. Those locks and dams are very important in making sure that we have trade that gets out of here. If they fail and don't function properly, you're going to have grain backed up, and obviously the prices are going to drop and everything else. Over in Rochester, we have several transportation projects that we're working with them on. One of them is to make sure that the runway over there gets expanded, and that they have a lighting system at their airport so that they can get planes in and out when they have tough weather, because sometimes they're bringing in, obviously transplant tissue and things like that, testing to get in and out in order to make sure that people's lives are on the line. So we want to update that. From there, also, they're trying to get to make sure that more flights are coming in from the west. which is going to be good. We've been working with them to get an airline to get that going. And so that's going to build more traffic and obviously help that area economically and bring even more people towards Mayo Clinic. On this side of the district, Mankato, working with the regional airport there on a tower. The Mankato Airport is the second busiest airport in the state, other than Minneapolis, St. Paul, and one other. And it's certainly the busiest without a tower. And the reason the traffic over there has increased so much is because the program with Mankato State University, Minnesota State Mankato, has really increased their aviation program. They have like 300 going, all these planes in and out. And without somebody there to control the aircraft, it's become dangerous. And so what we're trying to do is either have a kind of a digital tower where you have cameras and these types of things.
What does this have to do with childcare?
Okay, hang on.
Your constituents' questions.
Now I'm gonna ask
Three
you-
questions. There's only 15 minutes left.
All right, so what we're trying to do in Mankato is to have a digital tower that's going to allow people to, can be a remote location to get the aircraft in and out, or we're going to build, construct a tower. Either one can take many years, but we're working on that process. And then over in southwest Minnesota, we're working with the Ellis and Eastern Railroad to try to upgrade rail traffic, because they can only go about 10 miles an hour. And they have a new port facility over there with hundreds of jobs. They have an ethanol plant
Like
that
have
they want to
childcare for
expand.
people that won't work.
They have an ethanol plant that they want to expand, where they're making renewable jet fuel. And so if we can get that track upgraded, once that track's about 100 years old, they're going to be able to
Do you
do
not
more
care about your
business
constituents'
and help Rock
questions here in
County
this county?
and Nobles County. So that's our transportation update, which I was speaking to because Chairman Torkelson brought up transportation. Anyone who is interested in reforming the state of Minnesota's massive regulations on childcare, I would encourage you to speak to the governor. I would encourage you to speak to people like Representative Torkelson, Senator Dames, and others, and to get involved so we can streamline those regulations, we can increase access, so we can drive down costs to the people here in southern Minnesota and across our state.
Take some questions, please.
Next question.
Thanks for that question. Again, please be cordial.
She's the head of the indivisible group, very far left. They travel around. They've been to 15 about
Doesn't matter.
town halls. They
Next
travel around.
question.
That's what they
Next
do.
question.
So don't mind. Don't mind.
All right, next question is from Jason Pankinen. Front here, thanks, Jason. Briefly describe 2 to 3 pieces of legislation that the Democratic House has passed that are most concerning to you if they would become law.
Obviously, their gun control legislation, I don't support that. I voted against it. I believe in the Second Amendment. I support the Second Amendment and your right, your law-abiding right to keep and bear arms for lawful purposes. That's the way I'm always going to vote on that issue, just so you know that. As far as the other bills that they put together, look, there's a whole truckload of them. The last one on prescription drugs would be very devastating to the people of our country and around the world. The bill is called H.R. 3, and it would impose price controls on the companies that produce the biopharmaceutical cures that are saving lives and prolonging lives in our country and around the world. And they're going to say that they're going to dictate to these companies what they can charge. And if they don't charge that price, they're going to tax them to recoup the money. All in the name of a thing, helping the people. But it's not going to reduce the price. There are better ways to do that. I believe in one price, one pill. If a pharmaceutical company charges $1 in France, they should charge $1 in the United States. Down it goes. You can do that, transparency and cost, we go in, we don't know what the price of our prescription is going to be when we take it to the pharmacist. We don't even know what drug we're going to get because pharmacy benefit managers get in the middle and take a lot of the money that doesn't even go to the pharmaceutical companies. And we end up with products, drugs that our doctors didn't even want us to have. It's a crazy system. It has to be reformed. And there are areas in the generic market where we all agree, but we're not getting that done because of politics, unfortunately. But what happened, what they wanted to do in this H.R. 3 on the prescription drugs. In the end, the Congressional Budget Office and the White House economic advisors went and analyzed their bill. And it demonstrated that over a 10-year period moving forward, that anywhere from 15 to 100 new cures would not reach the market. They wouldn't be developed, and they wouldn't go to market, and the American people and others wouldn't be able to take advantage of those cures. And I just say, look at it this way. Everyone in this room, pretty much everyone in the country, knows at least one person who is alive today because of some incredible, innovative biopharmaceutical cure that was brought to the marketplace within the last 10 or 15 years. Our friend Neil Breitbart just went through cancer treatment at the Mayo Clinic. The drug that they used to eradicate the cancer from his body, thank the Lord, was developed about 14 years ago. So moving forward, do we really want to have less access to those types of life-saving drugs? I don't think so. I believe what the Democrats put forward, the way it would restrict these incredible, innovative cures, is immoral, it's heartless, it's reckless, irresponsible. I'll never vote for it. There are plenty of ways that we can attack cost without restricting the development and research and access to these incredible technologies that we lead the world on. 95% come from our country. The rest of the world piggybacks the benefits from us. I don't want us to subsidize the rest of the world, but I want to make sure all of us have access to those drugs.
Jason had a couple other questions on that card too, and if you want them answered, he'll answer them through the mail. That's, to add as many questions as we can, I'm going to just read the first one on each card. So, thanks for the question. Perry Meyer. Thanks, Perry. Highway 14 and our roads in general need funding. What are you doing to address these needs? I think you spoke to that.
Got a second question, Karen?
No. You covered it very well. Thank you for your work.
Thanks, Perry.
It's good to see you. Future political star.
All right, Cheryl Knight.
I'm ready.
Did I say that correctly?
You did.
Okay, thank you. Can you please explain your no vote on House Bill number 1?
Which one was number
House
one?
Bill number
Campaign
1
finance?
addressed voter access and election integrity, election security, political spending, and ethics for 3 branches of government.
Yeah.
Thanks, Cheryl.
So a good chunk of that is the Democrats trying to rig the elections for Democrats. So, no, I wasn't going to support a Democrat bill that was going to give them an advantage in elections. I don't support nationalizing elections. The elections should be run by the states. Although you can make a case after Iowa that maybe that should be the case. So, any type of election reform is going to have to be bipartisan. You're not going to let one party's not going to let the other party, shove something down their throats in order to get an advantage in the election. So,
What about like ethics, that part of the bill, and political spending? Those parts?
typically what the Democrats want to do is make sure that the people that give them money are allowed to give them money, and the people that give Republicans money aren't allowed to give Republicans money. So that's pretty much the crux of that bill. It's going nowhere. It's not going to pass the Senate. The Senate's not going to negotiate with the House on it. It was all messaging, which is much of what the Democrats have done. They pass bills that are messages. Instead of passing bills like the Violence Against Women Act, right? Reauthorization. First of all, they let that lapse in the last Congress and say, well, the Republicans were in control. That's true. But the Republicans offered to bring it up and reauthorize it. And Mrs. Pelosi said no. She wanted to do it thinking that she would take over the House. They took over the House. They brought it up. Did they bring up the reauthorization that's been on the books for 20 years? No. They added gun control and other things to it that we couldn't support. And so what happens is something that everyone says is very important. Violence against women reauthorization. Let's get that done. She puts it out there in a way that it's not going to get enacted because the Senate won't pass it and the House and the President won't sign it. So if they want to get it done, they should go negotiate with Leader McConnell and negotiate with the White House and get these bills through. I'm ready to vote in bipartisan fashion on all the things that we talked about: prescription drugs, healthcare reform, transportation bills, individual tax reform, border, you name it. I'm ready to vote that way today, and I've voted that way many times since I've been in office in just a year. But if they continue to bring left-wing bills to the House to message against Republicans, knowing they're never going to pass the Senate and get the president's signature, what are they doing? They're playing politics. They're playing the same politics they've been playing for 6 months on impeachment, and it's too bad because the people deserve better.
Amen.
Thank you for that question anyway, it leads to discussion. So, next question, Lori Sumner. Thank you, Lori. Can you explain why you voted against the PRO Act bill, which protects workers' rights in this country?
Because it gave too many advantages to unions and it discriminated against people that didn't want to belong to unions. Again, another messaging bill. That bill is going nowhere, it's never going to pass the law. They brought it up in order for people to say Republicans are anti-union. I'm not anti-union, I just met with the trades over in Rochester, and I'm pro-union in a lot of ways. I want to see union people have good work. You know who doesn't want to see union people have good work? The environmental extremists that are shutting down pipelines and shutting down projects all across this country. But some of those are good union jobs that aren't being performed because of extremist environmental policies, mostly on the Democrat side. So I'm more pro-union than they are in things like mining up in northern Minnesota. We should be doing that.
That would help that.
And then you talk about other things where I'm pro-union and the Democrats aren't. That Obamacare Cadillac tax wasn't a very good thing for unions. That was, they said, you know, the unions went out and they bargained for great benefits, including medical care. And Obamacare said, well, you bargained for such good stuff, we're going to tax you. So finally we got rid of that. I co-sponsored that bill, voted to get rid of it here a month or so ago. We made progress after 6 years, but that was a bad idea. And then you look at Medicare for all, public option. All these things over time are going to remove private insurance, especially the insurance that's been bargained for by our union folks, and they're going to be substituted with some sort of government stuff that isn't going to be as good. So there are a lot of ways that I'm pro-union when the Democrats aren't, but on this particular bill, it was a messaging bill just designed to go run an election and play politics like all the others.
Thanks, Lori. Jim Bodine. I get that right? Thank you. What are we going to do about reasserting Congress's rights and something over war powers after the president's dangerous advances against Iran? Did I get that right?
Go ahead.
I'm missing some of your, can you state the question again?
Yeah, what are we going to do about the fact that the president did not properly consult Congress before a very dangerous escalation against an official of a different country on the land of an ally to the United States against that ally's wishes?
Yeah, okay.
And he did not consult Congress.
No, I was fine with him. I was fine with him killing Soleimani. I'm glad he did it. It was the right thing for him. I would have said, please pull the trigger and get rid of that piece of shit.
That's fine. Then why didn't he go to Congress?
So here's the deal. He's operating under the same legislation, the same authorization as President Obama and the rest of them did.
And he
And
didn't
if you want
obey.
to go back, and look at that and revisit it, that's okay.
That was on.
But I noticed they didn't revisit it when Obama was president for 8 years. Now
He
when
had
Trump is
2
here,
years
we
to
do.
consult Congress,
So here's
and he
the thing.
didn't do it.
Look,
Why didn't he consult Congress? He had 2 weeks. That was.
Yes, he does.
He was late.
Okay, we've got the question.
He's not
okay,
gonna
the president took decisive action. I think the president did the right thing. I think
That's
our
not
world
the
is better
question. The
off.
question is.
I think, and I support, I don't see it the same way, Susan.
The question is him consulting Congress like he is held to do by law.
Why did you took out that RP?
That's your
Yes,
opinion.
he did.
Well, that's your opinion.
He didn't go about it ahead of time.
Yeah, that's your opinion, but you know, everything, hang on, then look at what happened though. There's so much overreaction to this stuff. The president takes decisive
More
action,
overreaction.
and the left wing overreacts. They said, remember when the airline was shut down, and Buttigieg is up there saying, I bet Trump, could have had something to do with it. No, it was the Iranians that did it.
Why
Oh,
did he
and then there was a whole bunch of people on the left that said, as
And
soon
why
as this
did
happened,
Congress hold
as
it?
soon as this happened, they said, oh, we're gonna get into a big war with Iran. No, we're not. No, we're not.
Hey,
Again,
the other
he is
shit is
doing a good job
They're
of
not
foreign
gonna tell
policy.
you all.
We're trying to clean up the mess of Obama, and we're doing a good job. And so I support the president and his foreign policy.
But why did you go to Congress? That's the question.
Because he's.
And why did Congress
So
go
that's what I asked
to
him. I don't know.
Okay, we're gonna move on. The responsibilities of the president when it comes to commander-in-chief have been a running argument for this nation's entire history. And it's still going on, and that's what we're dealing with here too. Next question. Steve Huffman. I should know where that is. Support of HR 1769 Dairy Pride Act. I ask you to please support this bill pertaining to FDA enforcement of existing law about accurate labeling of dairy products. There are many imitations that are using false labeling which causes food safety concerns.
Unless there's a competing bill, see, we're already on that bill. If we're not, that's just a mistake, but we're on that one. We're on to make sure that they don't confuse people on meat. When it comes to dairy, we want to get 1% whole milk back into schools completely. And by the way, getting rid of Mrs. Obama's school lunch regulations, that was a good thing. So I'm happy that that happened. But no, 100% with you. Let's make sure that everybody's competing on a fair basis. They shouldn't be using the word milk when it's not. And we don't want to undermine our farmers any more than they have been this last generation. We might have lost, a whole generation of kids drinking milk when they really wiped it out and dumped it down like they did. And that's too bad. Hopefully we'll get that back. Appreciate your work in agriculture. I think it's fair to say that people like the Hoffmans, all our fine producers, Barry, the rest of them, somebody else from CHS is somewhere. Lots of good farmers. Paul's a farmer, and Swenson's. When you think about what we have in America with our agriculture industry and our farmers, we are the envy of the world. It's unbelievable how efficient they are, how productive we are, and it's just an incredible thing. And the liberals always take this out of context, so listen to the whole statement. It's an incredible thing that you never have to worry about going hungry based upon the fact, and this is what I'm talking about, the food supply. You walk into the grocery store, an incredible, abundant array of choices, quality products at affordable prices. That doesn't happen everywhere around the world. Socialist countries like Venezuela, they're lucky if there's anything on the shelves. Other countries, even first world countries, wonder how the heck we do it here and have that. And I always tell people, you could have a pocket full of $100 bills, a pocket full of EBT cards, and you walk into the grocery store and there's nothing on the shelves. How are you going to feed your families? So we appreciate our farmers and agribusiness and our producers, and we're going to support you 100% every day in office. I'll tell you that.
We got time for one more. John Nicholson. Thanks, John. Where do you stand on more gun control legislation? I think you can get
Second Amendment. And we got enough laws on the books, we should enforce them. But typically when you add more and more layers of regulations and laws, you're just depriving the rights of law-abiding citizens to keep and bear arms for lawful purposes. And so I promised everyone on the way in that I was going to be somebody who would defend our U.S. liberties, particularly in the Constitution, particularly the right to life. I'm 100% pro-life and always will be. the right to keep and bear arms, and the right to religious freedom. And John, I'd just like to say, you're just the chief of police over at Springfield. We have another police officer, too, and another one from local. And we appreciate what you do. We really do. We had a friend of, over in Wasika recently, Eric Matson, a police officer in Wasika. He was tracking down a bad guy, a real bad guy, some meth dealer out on, had warrants, and the meth dealer shot him in the face a little over a month ago. He's doing better. He's out of intensive care finally, but he's got a long ways to go. And so it just shows you that every day the police officers that you see, that they don't know what they're getting into. And sometimes it's the mental health issues that you can hardly believe what you're seeing, drugs. They're walking into areas and they don't even know if they touch something, they can die. Some of these drugs are that potent. And they have to carry around these cans for when people overdose to try to bring them back. I mean, they see everything in addition to just what you'd say is regular police work. It's really unbelievable. And so we pray for Officer Matson. And we have your backs, all right? We'll see you. All right?
Thank you, Congressman Hagedorn, for taking time to answer our questions in Brown County, and thanks to all of you for joining us. For the questions we didn't get to, there's a bunch of them in here yet. If you've got your name and address on them, they will answer them. If you have questions that are in here and you didn't put your essentials on, you can go out there and get it down. The staff or Jim Hagedorn will answer them. And that should be it. Thanks everybody for coming. Have a nice day.